Welcome to episode 17 of Off the Fields. Thank you guys for tuning in this evening. In this episode, me and Paris will be breaking down. Obviously, there's still a lot of emotions overpouring into the rest of the weekend when it comes to Ohio State Buckeyes losing to it's hard for me to say it, Michigan. Buckeye Nation has really been just upset about Ryan Day. It's now come down to his coaching ability and his lack of leadership. So right now, it does appear that Buckeye Nation, most people think that he should be fired. But let's be realistic here. Who would replace Ryan Day right now, right? So we're going to be talking about that. And then also Joshua Giddey, who plays for the Oklahoma City Thunder. I know that you've heard that he's going viral for sleeping with an underage girl. And that's just it's really unfortunate that he thinks it's okay to have consensual sex with the 14-year-old girl or 15, whatever age she is, she's underage. And it's inappropriate. In a way, this makes him look like, I don't know, it's just questionable. What man would find that attractive? She's 14. I understand that these days a lot of young women portray themselves a certain way on social media to the world. And then a lot of women sometimes do target NBA player. So it's just, you can look at that from different perspectives, but it doesn't make what he did right. So Paris is about to here. Sure, my. Okay, there is Paris. Hi, Paris.
How are you?
Good, good. So we were just talking about, realistically, Buckeye Nation is still pretty sad about that loss to Michigan. 3 years in a row, it's now like we want Ryan Day gone, right? It's all about, in a way, people want him fired. That's going around everywhere. And it's really an emotional response. I want to say
Right.
it truly is an emotional response because let's be realistic. No, there's nobody to replace him right now.
Right.
And we're not going to be able to get Urban back. We're not going to be able to get Tressel back. These guys are not even an option to return back to Ohio State, even though they were great coaches. We wanted. I think what we expected to see was kind of that same coaching style from those previous coaches. And since day one, when Urban left, I was there. Okay, I was there at that press conference. And when I saw Ryan Day, I'm sorry, but for me, he just never had that it factor as a coach. So people were also looking for that. People were also looking for emotions from him. It's hard to get emotion out of Ryan Day, but we saw that earlier on in the regular season throughout a few games. So we were just finally convinced that, okay, he does have this it factor. He does have this fight in him that we normally don't see. But I did see something earlier from 11 Warriors, I think. They said that Ohio State did not come in with that level of energy that they needed to have, which is what I was talking about as well. They did not come with that level of fight and energy that was expected of them. And it also reflected in Ryan Day. He did not have this energy. He was so cool, calm, and collective. You can be conservative. We know Ohio State is conservative in the coaching style, but that wasn't the game to.
Uh, you know, I mean, there's a lot of things to unpack here. I don't think that being cool, calm, and collective is a problem at all. Because when you are good at what you do, you're going to be cool, calm, and collective.
Right.
If you want to talk about cool, calm, and collective, look at Bryce Young. Bryce Young was a phenomenal quarterback in college who was very
Mm-hmm.
much cool, calm, and collective. He wasn't like that Angel Reese type of player who was going to junk talk, smack talk on the field. Nah, he
Right.
was going to drunk talk with his skill set.
Right. Show
And
you.
his coach, Nick Saban. Nick Saban, don't get me wrong, yeah, he shoots out at his players here and there, and you catch it on the cameras. But Nick Saban, he's a pretty level-headed coach, and it's very seldom that you do really see him flip out or all over the place, all over the field.
Mhm.
So it's important to note that just because you're not jumping up and down or so hyper on the field
Mhm.
doesn't necessarily mean that you're not still implementing a fighting spirit. So
Mhm.
I don't want to confuse coaching styles with what you're implementing in the program,
Mhm.
because you can still be cool, calm, and collective, but have within your program a strong mindset, a strong hunger, to have your team go exude in this game and dominate. And I
Mhm.
think that is what was missing, was that I think many of the players just saw them as another game
Mhm.
and not as the game. I
Right.
think that they went into this not realizing that this is the first playoff game that you're gonna
Right.
face. The playoff starts now. And I
Right.
think that mindset is what was missing. You
Mhm.
know, when I looked at the teams, I feel like Michigan is designed to beat Ohio State. Ohio State is designed to beat the SEC.
Yeah.
So, in other words, Michigan, they focus for Ohio State. All season, their focus is for Ohio State.
Mhm.
Ohio State looks at the bigger picture. They're
They do.
focused on making sure we can beat Georgia, making sure we can beat Alabama. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think that they're forgetting that you have to defeat Michigan first before you get
Mhm.
to them.
Yeah.
And with Michigan, it's the opposite. They're focused so much on us that they've learned how to get past us. Now, they still don't know how to handle those SEC Big 12 teams all the way.
They don't.
But they at least have the first step taken care of. And I think that Ohio State, especially this season, they were really focused on the end and not necessarily the journey. And I think that's what was really missing. But it's honestly, it's a lot of things to unpack here, because you know there could have been better coaching calls, yes, but honestly, if we had a more seasoned quarterback, it would not have turned out the way it did. You know, if we didn't make some of the defensive mistakes that we made, it would not have turned out the way it did. If we made that freaking field goal, which Ryan Day didn't kick himself, it would not have turned out the way it did. Again, I understand momentum means everything, and going into that game, I did not see it. Heck, I didn't even see it from the fans. I didn't even see the fans. I mean, it's so much. I didn't even see red, an ocean or a sea, a puddle of red. So I
Mm.
mean, it starts with the fan base. And I spoke with you a little off camera, and there was a
Mhm.
couple things I said. I won't share all because I understand it might be a little too much to share within the time frame, but I will hit some important points. The first one is, if we get rid of Buying Day, who the heck is going to want to take on this position with all of the pressure that he has, with the
Right.
unexpected, with the unrealistic expectations that Ohio State has for the program? They expect to go undefeated every year, and they expect to win a national championship every year, and that's not going to happen. And no coach can do that. I mean, we're forgetting that even when Georgia won the national championship their first year, they lost the SEC title to Alabama.
Mhm.
And when you look at Alabama, Alabama knows the thing about losing the conference championship, but still staying focused and winning the national championship.
Right.
I mean, if they defeat Georgia for the SEC championship, baby, they're in. And when they lost to Texas, everyone counted them out. And look at them
Mhm.
now; they're one
Right.
of the hot favorites. So,
Mhm.
I think one of the biggest things that we have to keep in mind, especially with the playoff expanding next year, is that we have to realize, do we want to beat Michigan every year, or do we want to win national championships? Because starting next season, we can still lose to Michigan and play in the Big Ten championship game, possibly
Right.
against them. We can still
Mhm.
lose to Michigan and still have a chance at the national championship. So I think for me, I don't want to see Ohio State give up too soon, and that's what I see from them. I don't see a spirit of fight,
Mhm.
and it's gonna be dangerous next year because, baby, if you lose to Michigan, okay, that's what. But you have more games the week after, so get
Right.
your stuff together, suit up, and let's go because the fight isn't over.
Well, this is the thing. Um, I don't even know if they're gonna get rid of Kyle McCord. He may not be the starting quarterback. People are very hopeful for Nolan. They want him there like now. But if Kyle McCord does take a seat, it makes total sense. He was not aggressive as a quarterback. He did not run in the pocket. He was not really fighting. He really came into the game thinking that this was just another game. He said that in a press conference. Um, I'm sure when they had practice at the Woody one day. So it's really about how the coaches emphasize how big the game is to the players. Of course, you have the coaches that have been there. Brian Hartline, who was there with Urban as well. He understands, but he's such a good guy. He's not going to overstep his boundaries when it comes to coaching. I think that Ryan Day, he's a respectable guy. People hold him to high regard. But the fact that he's losing that one game to Michigan, that game, if they would have won, it would have somewhat made up for the other two. It would have somewhat redeemed him because people were already still fickety about him from the previous two seasons. And so, I mean, yeah, you got to think about the players that he's developed, the players that are now in the NFL. Yeah, he's successful with that, but I just didn't get that leadership quality in him at the game. I didn't really see it. And if I would have seen it, I think we would have saw it through the players. A lot of these things that we're looking for in the coach reflects through the players on the field, and we should be able to see it in their performance. I know that other former Ohio State Buckeyes, they feel the same way. They feel like that fight just wasn't there and that this game wasn't taken seriously at all. And it
I feel
wasn't
like
even about a level of confidence. You can be confident and cocky and walk in and think you're going to win because you're the shit, but that wasn't even the case.
it wasn't the same team that I saw go against Notre Dame. That was definitely a more physical team.
Yeah.
And I think that even the whole mindset though, the whole mindset from the coaching to the players looked different.
Mm-hmm.
They went in looking as if they had to prove something. I think against Michigan, they just didn't have that. They just went in knowing they're good
Mm-hmm.
and we're gonna beat them. But
Right.
it's not a matter of knowing you're good. It's a matter of I'm gonna be better
Right.
because especially with Michigan over the past recent years and but whether we're adding the cheating scandal to it or not, at the end of the day, Michigan is a decent team, and
Yeah.
you can't sit here and say that Michigan isn't a decent team. Not after they just
Right.
beat Ohio State.
Right.
And let's
Right.
be honest, there's not many teams better than Ohio State.
There's not.
So, so when you look at the teams that are better than Ohio State and you take away Michigan, okay, yeah, you got Georgia. Yeah, you
Mm-hmm.
might throw Alabama in there. But at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, at this point, teams are going to get better. And you
Right.
have to expect teams to get better. And so
Mm-hmm.
now you yourself have to make sure that you stay on your edge to stay better. The
Right.
hardest thing about being at the top is that you really don't have anyone in front of you to chase. But,
Mm-hmm.
when you're not at the top, you have teams and you have people and elements that you're trying to chase.
Mm-hmm.
And, when you're chasing it, and next thing you kind of realize that you're somewhat leveled, you know, there's a different type of motivation. And,
Right.
and I just think that, I think that Ohio State has dominated over Michigan for so many years that after a while, it just became the expectation and the norm.
It did.
But I think that comes with that comes a little level of complacent. They were a
No,
little too complacent, and again, like like that Michigan player said, they just wanted it more. And I think
mm-hmm.
that was just the result of the game. Michigan was just a little hungry. They had a cheating scandal. They wanted to, it just looked like they wanted to prove, and I didn't see that from Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, it was just another game. And,
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, Clemson, Alabama, Georgia, Texas, Oklahoma, Washington, these teams are good now.
Right.
So you can't go in thinking that they're going to be a walk in the cake. You got to
Mm-hmm.
go in and play tit for tat, and you got to play till the end. And if you don't, you're going to find yourself with the shorter end of the stick, and there's no one else to blame. At this point, we can't blame a cheating scandal now, because
No, it has
because
nothing to do with
because
the cheating
no,
scandal, unfortunately.
like
I
at this
think,
point, this was a loss.
It
Last
was.
year, cheating scandal. The
It
year
makes it even
before,
worse.
cheating scandal. But this
What
year,
makes Yeah,
it was
I mean, what makes
off.
it worse is because they didn't even have their head coach. Harbaugh is an example of a coach who has been loyal to a program for years. They have lost how many times to Ohio State, right? Before 2 years ago. He was on his way out the door.
Yeah,
That
he
just
was.
lets you know how important the game is. Ryan Day. It almost seems like the shoe may be on the other foot a little bit. But I don't know about the loyalty part when it comes to Ryan Day because he hasn't delivered. So in Ohio, Buckeye Nation is not really, they're not with it. And it just, they don't want it to happen again either. As many times as Harbaugh lost to Ohio State before 2 years ago, I don't think Ohio State would be able to be in that
No.
same predicament.
Because
Um,
Ohio State standards are much higher. But at the same time, Ohio State, if you're gonna have these standards, who are you gonna bring in?
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
you have to be reasonable. Yeah,
that's the thing.
Saban ain't going anywhere.
No,
Smart
Saban's not.
ain't going anywhere.
I heard
That
somebody say Jimbo Fisher, but I just don't think that would be a good fit.
I mean, but
Um,
what did Jimbo Fisher do? He's leaving himself. So at this point, you just like let's be honest. You can't just you can't just pick a coach, because what you think is gonna work. It don't work. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't
right.
work that way. And then this
And
new age of NIL, you're also gonna make sure that you need a coach who understands that part because that's a huge part of recruiting now.
it is. And I think that, you know, that's worked out in Ohio State's favor with the NIL. That's not something that they struggled with at all. And top recruits are still there. I mean, too bad Marvin Harrison Jr. did not leave with a pair of gold pants.
Yeah, that's
Um,
quite unbelievable.
that's going to be like, something missing from his resume. But it's not going to taint him as a
No,
player. He's a phenomenal player. He's the best player in college football right now. And I think that you know, I don't think he's. You told me yesterday that he can't stay, right? He can't stay another year, even if he wanted
Marvin
to.
Harrison can stay another
Yeah,
year.
yeah.
He can.
That's the thing. Is he really? If he had the chance to stay and choose to stay another year, would he actually do that? I don't know.
Do you think
Um,
he? Would you like to see him
I would
back?
love to see him another year because he's just going to be even more seasoned. He's going to be way more developed. He's really going to be
I think the
just
opposite.
even
I
better.
think he needs to go. I think he has outgrown his space, almost like CJ Stroud. As I'm glad that CJ Stroud moved on to the NFL because right now, not only is he has he proven
Yeah.
that he's ready to be there,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that especially with Marvin, I think he deserves a little more.
But
And
wouldn't you love to see Nolan and Marvin? I mean, that would just be epic.
Brianna, like that to me that's fantasy and fiction,
Okay.
because because well because you have to be honest, he doesn't have you don't just go from high school to college football. Look at Ark Manning.
Mm-hmm.
He was the number one player in the nation. Everyone raved about him. In the
Right.
spring game, he was horrible.
Mm-hmm.
Just last weekend he played in his first game. Yeah, he got a couple snaps, but it wasn't anything outstanding.
Right.
I mean, don't now he's a true freshman. He graduated high school early. So
Mm-hmm.
of course, he's not going to be so perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But again, you have a season to get it right.
Right.
And with the playoff expanding, with Oregon, Washington, UCLA, USC coming, you're facing a whole different ball game now. You don't you're walking back with even more uncertainty. I mean, this year
Mm-hmm.
we had uncertainty with Common Core, Devin Brown. Next
Mm-hmm.
year you're gonna have the same thing, but
And
you have
I
the
think
freshman
Denzel Burke
Lincoln.
too. Denzel Burke, he could be in a better place right now than what he is right now, physicality wise, and based off
Denzel
what I
Burke,
saw in that
I
game.
can see that,
Mm-hmm.
but Marvin Harrison, I mean, staying another. I personally don't see any more growth with him. I think it's important to note that you know as you might want to do this for the team, but in terms of your growth, what are you going to get out of it?
Right.
Um, you know, Devin Brown doesn't have he what started actually he didn't really start
Mm-hmm.
the games if I'm not mistaken. I think he did get playing action
Mm-hmm.
in two games earlier this season. The freshman Lincoln, who was a 5-star outstanding freshman, he has no experience.
Yeah.
Aaron Nolan's not going to have any experience. You also got to remember, Ohio State recruited a quarterback from the transfer portal last season. We
Mm-hmm.
didn't even see him this year. So you're going
Right.
to have like 5, 6 quarterbacks and only one with experience, Kyle McCord.
Mm-hmm.
And we're already shaky with him.
And that's part
So
of it.
I
Like,
think
remember we were
just the
able to bring
growing
in
pains.
Cardell. He was a third string quarterback, and we were able to pull him in the game. Where was our second string or third string quarterback in this game?
So I just think that with Marvin coming back, I don't. If we had like if we had a a good quarterback,
Secret
I
weapon.
I said yeah,
Mm-hmm.
why not? But I think that it's playing Russian roulette, and I think and there's nothing. We know your potential, so
Right.
Mark, like we know you're outstanding. It's not
Mm-hmm.
like you have to come back because you got to improve your draft stock.
Right.
We know you're a top pick.
Right.
But again, if God forbid this season next year
Mm-hmm.
isn't a superstar season, it just only gets worse. It's only gonna get
I'm
worse.
pretty
And
sure a lot of alumni, they just, I want him gone. I want him gone. I want Ryan Day gone. And it sucks because you don't want to be that coach. That's really embarrassing. But he's that coach that dropped the ball. He broke the the winning streak. He broke it.
I mean he did, but we also got to be real because as I told you off camera too, they got mad at Meyer Urban, for being able to beat championship teams like Alabama and
Mhm.
Clemson, but then we
Mhm.
get blown up by Purdue,
Yeah. How,
Michigan State,
how does that
and
work?
Iowa.
Right.
And
Mhm.
then, you talk about Jim Trussell. Yeah, they talked about him being able to beat Michigan, but then they want to get mad at him because he couldn't win in big games. And when
No.
you look at his record, he didn't win in big games. And he was a coach for how long?
I
Who
know,
was
right?
able to beat Michigan, but then we got so complacent with Michigan that we wanted more.
Yeah.
And so, at this point, it's football. What coach do you know is going to go undefeated, win the conference championship, win the national title
Right.
multiple years in a row, consecutive?
And I mean, this is the thing. There are a lot of moving pieces right now at Ohio State. Gene Smith is leaving. Okay. And for me, I think that's crucial when it comes to the program. Um, he's been at the head of the program for years. And it's who is going to replace this guy? Who is going to make these changes that need to be made?
Girl, I don't know.
You
This,
know, like,
this off season is gonna be a lot's gonna happen this off season. With Ohio State, with the Michigan scandal,
mm-hmm,
Oregon quarterback potentially leaving, Washington quarterback leaving,
mm-hmm.
JJ McCarthy, Michigan's quarterback leaving. It's gonna be a lot of shifts this off season,
Yeah.
and then with the playoff expanding, it's gonna be a lot. It's gonna be a lot, but I think a lot of programs are gonna have some big shifting to do. A lot of
Mm-hmm,
coaches, a lot of programs have already made their shift. A lot
mm-hmm.
of programs have already gotten rid of their head coaches, their defensive
And we
coordinators,
saw
offensive
that
coordinators.
left and right, dropping head
So
coaches this year.
that again, those teams also weren't caliber teams like Ohio State.
Right.
So Texas A&M,
Mm-hmm,
okay, Mississippi State, they get rid of their head coaches, but they haven't been performing on a level of Ohio State. So
right.
they can afford to get rid of their head coach and just pick up
Mm-hmm.
somebody else. But we're not going to pick up the coach from Duke. We would
Absolutely not.
we would just keep ryanday over the coach
Mm-hmm.
from Duke. But
Yeah.
again, we don't have many players to choose from. So I
Right.
think this point, if it's not already going to be, it's going to be a changing point. And
Mm-hmm.
as I told you off camera, I believe that there's going to be just big changes in the program. We might not see so many losses, coaching losses. We might see,
Mm-hmm.
potential coaching losses, but I do believe that a lot of powers will change. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
do believe that certain duties will be relinquished and given to other members within the program.
Yeah,
And I
because
think that
now they need a coach that's going to be a game changer, like Urban, how came in and really changed the program. Kind of picked it back up from where it should have been in the first place. So that's what they're going to need, and it's going to take some time to find that. So right now, everybody's just still on high on emotions. The fact that it happened 3 times, something we kind of just have to deal with. Um, but yeah, we'll see in the off season. We'll see at the spring game. We'll get a better idea of what we're working with for next season. But for now, everybody can look forward to seeing Aaron Nolan because he's already committed. I know Jeremiah Smith, the wide receiver from down here in South Florida, has already committed. So you have some top recruits that are coming to Ohio State next season and that are going to be some playmakers in the game, just like Marvin Harrison Jr. But it's down to the play calling. And Ryan Day shouldn't have the play calling. They need to give it to somebody else. That's been established, you know.
And to be
So
clear, Ryan talked about that. They made that when Brian Hartline got promoted to offensive coordinator, the first thing people wanted to know was, is he going to play calls? And Ryan Day said himself, Ryan Day is going to continue to play calls, but he will be the official offensive coordinator. So I think that's one of the biggest changes you might see, where I think
yeah,
Ryan Day might relinquish his play calling duties and give them more to Hartline.
yeah.
And I think that might be a
Hartline
shift.
is the guy. I love Hartline. He knows what he's doing. And his numbers back up what he says. You know, he's not even a guy that's you know, cocky or big headed or anything like that, but his numbers matched with his performance. So I would love if Brian Hartline was able to, you know, call the plays for next season. That's going to be interesting. A lot of people would see a big difference. I think if he was put in that position. But moving on, okay, because we know that we're going to come back to this, especially when the investigation reveals some new evidence or the things that they've been keeping from us.
Right.
Joshua Giddey from OKC, I mean, sleeping with a underage girl is out of line. I don't care what she looks like. Based off the things that we've seen, the girl is proud that she slept with this guy, that she landed this guy in a way like securing the bag, something of that nature. That's the type of vibes that I'm getting from this young girl. I think she's like 14 or 15. Anyways, for Joshua Giddey to go on social media and, I mean, proudly showcase this girl is sickening. She's underage, okay? I don't care if she looks like she's 18. She's not. And I'm sure her parents aren't cool with that. But you never know. It's very tricky. Some girls are groomed to be put in these situations. And sometimes they can be groomed by their own parents. You know, you just don't know to what lengths people will go to have a certain lifestyle. And then she's in a generation where it's strictly all about social media. So that plays a role too. But for him to go ahead and just parade it around, it's sick. And I think that he's about to lose that $40 million that's on the line. So I think it's appropriate if he does lose it. There needs to be a punishment. There needs to be a repercussion. He needs to get in trouble. They need to keep talking about it. The only reason why that they don't talk about it, I mean, if he was black, it would be all over the news. It would be on CNN. It would be everywhere. And we would keep hearing it over and over and over and over. But he's not black. That makes a difference. What do you think? Oh, I can't hear you. What'd you say? Mm-mm. I can't hear you. Nope. Okay. I can hear you now.
You can hear me now?
Yeah.
Perfect. So to give people a little background story, Josh Giddey allegedly had some sort of sexual relations with a young girl named Liv Cook.
Mm-hmm.
Cook was the one.
1 second. Okay.
We're good?
Yeah.
So to give people a little background, So Josh Giddey from the Oklahoma City Thunder, he went viral for pictures and videos with a young girl named Liv Cook. Liv Cook was a girl who shared the pictures and the videos to her social media, and people took and they investigated. Apparently, she's a 15-year-old sophomore in high school, and a part of the clips and the images that were released that she released were pictures of him and her older brother hanging out talking. There was one picture of her and the NBA player where she said, "I just Giddey," and other pictures of the two together. Of course, the NBA or the sports world investigated, found out who the young girl was, pulled up her social media, found her page, and it came to the light that she is underage. So Josh Giddey has now been found to have some sort of sexual relation with a young girl who is 15, who's believed to be, she might be 16, but she's 15. It's 90% sure she's underage. Of course, facts are still supposed to be coming to the light. But what I find fascinating and what many people are a little concerned about is the NBA's lack of stamping their foot on the situation.
Right.
Amid the news breaking, he still was allowed to play, and it seemed was allowed to play even with the organization knowing about the allegations, and I think that's what bothered people so much. There were some tweets that I've seen where people said that Kyrie lost his shoe deal for posting a link out of content. Josh has suspended 25 games for posting a gun on Instagram Live, but Josh Giddey gets to play while being in the middle of sexual acts with someone underage, and it's not being talked about. And the on ESPN. This is what someone tweeted. Just one of many. Someone else said when the head coach of the Oklahoma City Thunder came out in the media and said that Josh Giddey will be playing the night a couple days ago. Someone said, I think it is now 100% safe to say that Josh's 25-game suspension was a product of Adam Silver's ego and not Josh's offenses. I mean, people were going crazy about this. Someone said that Ja Morant was home sitting on the couch for a month and also had to make an apology on ESPN for not doing something illegal. I mean, people, some people said it's because of his skin tone, and I hate to bring race into it, but someone said it's because of his skin tone.
It is.
We
can't not talk about race in the situation because it is race. We know the narratives that are pushed for Black athletes versus white athletes. And so for Joshua Giddey to be, he's under investigation. There's a case going on right now, and it's active, and it's happening right now. So for him to be under investigation for sexual assault, are you kidding me? And he's able to play? But you know who really received the wrath of the NBA is somebody like Kyrie Irving. My goodness. It was crazy, okay? Somebody else who also receives the wrath is Dwight Howard, okay? These guys are plastered all over the media in such a negative light. Okay, maybe they made a comment or it was a form of self-expression. Are they not allowed to do that? Because it seems that Joshua Giddey is able to self-express himself in any way he thinks is okay, no matter what age and no matter what way. So I think that he is going to get a slap on the wrist in this scenario. Also because the girl is not, she's not playing victim at all. I think that's what makes it different. Not just about race, but I think that's a factor and why it's being handled the way that it is. But yeah, they pick and choose which athletes should receive punishment for certain things versus the ones who don't. So when Kyrie Irving, he's been fined so many times, it's crazy. But I did see that $40 million is up for, he could lose that deal. As far as Giddey, $40 million deal that he could lose once the results are given in this investigation. I think that's just put out there. I don't really think he's going to lose $40 million. He may lose some money. It may not even really be a lot to him, but it's definitely going to be a slap on the wrist. And it's unfortunate. It just lets you know that racism is still very, very, very present in the NBA and in the sports media, especially on how they cover certain scandals, you know? So Joshua Giddey, I mean, it's really just sick to know that he finds that attractive, you know?
Well, it'd also be interesting to know from the young girl's perspective, did you know she was that age?
Mm-hmm.
Like, did she present herself older? Did she lie about her age? Like, how did you get caught in this situation? Because, you know, I didn't see pictures of Rihanna, but she doesn't look super old.
Yeah.
So, what, I'm confused. And again, we look at James Harden. James Harden was given a hefty fine, for what he said about the GM of the 76ers.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe he called the GM a liar, and he had to pay about maybe like $100,000 fine.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, at this point, you can't get mad for people realizing that, people realizing that perhaps the NBA picks and chooses who, they want to nag when it comes to this, because this is not a lighthearted situation.
Right.
You know, underage. This is Brianna. This is child molestation.
Yeah, it is.
If she's underage and you're over 21, dude, that's this isn't patty cake.
He should be on the registry. He should be on the sex offenders registry list because
NBA player, this dude would be locked up right now. Let's call it a spade.
Mm-hmm.
And calling a spade, former NFL Dallas Cowboys star Dezbryant called out Malikaandrews
he did
an hour and a half ago. He took to Twitter and he criticized Malikaandrews for her critical critique of the former Alabama Crimson Tide star Brandon Miller, who was black, on the night of the NBA draft. As we all know, and for those that don't know, Miller was allegedly used by one of his teammates in a fatal shooting in Tuscaloosa last year. Miller allegedly had no knowledge of the intent that his teammate or whoever was going to use the gun that he brought to the shooting. But Brian went on Twitter and he said, at Malikaandrews, you went out of your way to crucify Brandon Miller on draft day. Why haven't you said nothing about Josh Giddey? I advise you not to make this black or white. Your parents really raised you wrong because you went out of your way to you went to private school. You went out of your way. You went to private school, and that doesn't make you better. You appeal, and I know you're kind. You are just a puppet. I don't know how a former or current NBA player could sit there across from you and look at you with some kind of respect.
He said this.
He said, you can go look at the tweet. It's still up, thousands of likes, hundreds of thousands of views. He said this. So, and this is just a side note. And I hate to bring race into it, Brianna, but I'm just curious. If I'm not mistaken, isn't she engaged to a white man?
She is.
Okay. I just, not that matters. But many people, many black people, many black men, many people. I'm not going to lie. I knew her because people complained about her so much on Twitter, social media.
That's crazy.
And what is she saying and doing? But come to find out, she seems to be someone who negatively puts black male athletes into a negative spotlight. But when things like that happens with Josh Giddey, she's a little more quiet or reserved, or she's not as quick to go on Twitter and type some things up like she was with John Morant, Brandon Miller, and others.
Well, yeah, I think she's doing what the network likes. What they're the ones who really pull the strings at the end. Her producer has to approve what she says before she goes on air. And so if they approve that narrative, then that's the narrative that they're trying to push and that they will continue to try to push. But if they don't want to focus on Josh Giddey, then they won't focus on Josh Giddey because they don't want to put too much limelight on that situation. But you know what? That just lets you know that you have to continue to talk about race in this situation, because she is someone who is supposed to be representation, right? She's supposed to be representation in that space for Black women. And right now, the fact that she's not really voicing that, and you have somebody else from a different sport commenting on what she says, and what she's not covering, just lets you know the severity of it. And that it lets you know that she really does keep this negative narrative against Black male athletes. She loves to just talk about it over and over and over again. She won't let it go. Okay, she's in that position to make that call, to continue to bring up certain things. And so I think that the fact that Dezbryant called her out, I think it's great. I think that's what athletes are, once they're in that type of position like Dezbryant, I think that they are able to do that, and they should continue to be vocal because they've been programmed for so long not to be vocal and to just only say this or only say it in that way or make sure you don't talk about this. I can remember asking Dontre Wilson in practice about what he thought about Colin Kaepernick taking a knee when it just happened. I would say 30 minutes later. And so they all looked at me crazy, like, what are you doing? Don't do that. But you can't tell somebody like Dezbryant that. He's going to say what he wants to say. And now we have, Twitter and a lot more access to say how we feel. But at the same time, it's a reflection of the network too. The fact that she decides to just down talk Black men. And it's sad because she's considered Black herself, but who knows? Maybe her sister tells her, maybe she doesn't, I just think that it's given very fake. She's giving me very fake.
She's trending. She's hot on social media
I'm
right
sure.
now.
And this is also good publicity for her. Not all bad news is some bad news is good news. And so in this situation, the fact that she's trending for what Dezbryant said, I'm sure she's going to respond. And obviously her publicist is going to make sure it's together. It works out in her favor, but she needs to really speak for herself as a Black woman. That's what she needs to do, just to set the precedent. Because right now her Black card is like revoked. You know what I'm saying? And when that happens, that's not good for you. It's not going to change her interviews or anything like that, or what she covers and stuff like that. But it's still just not a good look. You know what I'm saying? There's only so many of us in that position, and she was given that position, and her sister. You know what I'm saying? So it's like there are some things you have to stick to. You need to embrace your Blackness somewhat. When you have athletes calling you out about always down talking Black men, you don't feel the inkling to respond to that as a Black woman. I think that you should. You can. Nobody's going to stop you, but it's about you taking that risk and, dealing with the network afterwards. Because we know what happens when they decide to speak on things, when they decide to speak on stuff like that, they have to deal with the network. I think that
Spoken from a true woman of wisdom in the sports media world.
Yeah, because the thing is this, like, if we want to see any type of change on how the athletes are covered, I think you got to start speaking about it. I think that she is a puppet. She is a puppet. We know there are a lot of puppets in sports media. She's one of them. And I don't know. We'll see. As far as she's married to a white guy. It just confirms where her loyalty is, but she's also white, so it's something that she's, used to probably. She may be comfortable with speaking about it like that because she's able to play both sides of the
I'm
fence.
learning a lot from you right now because I didn't even know she was in a fight. I didn't know much of her. I don't follow her or really pay attention to any of the news she shares. But I will tell you, I know for a fact someone is going to dig her up.
Yeah.
And when they do, the Black community's publicists will make sure it's all well put together, just like her response.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to dish it out. And when they do, I think for a very long time,
Mm-hmm.
her ethics and her integrity as a Black reporter will be tainted. It
It
will be,
will.
and I think that she will be someone that white media will always look to use,
Mm-hmm.
but she will definitely be someone that the Black community will not
No,
honor for
they're not calling
news.
her
Right,
to go on no trips.
right,
Nothing.
right.
Nothing. If it's not work related. But like, it's sad. It's really sad to know that till this day we're still dealing with that. When somebody's in that seat, there's still that one biracial person who feels the need to talk down on Black athletes. Black athletes make up almost 90% of the NBA and the NFL.
Me too.
And let's not mention other sports. Like, I mean, seriously, you gotta, some people just don't have the balls. But you know what? It's her job. Okay. She's abiding by rules, regulations, policy. So that's her job. I just think that the fact that she was called out by Dezbryant, we know that Joshua Giddey is not being talked about enough. Just like that one football player who almost killed his girlfriend. Alex Wheeler was his name, I think, or Chad Wheeler was his name. And yeah, so I mean, when they're not talked about, it's just proof that sports media is biased. I think that Joshua Giddey, I think we're going to see people continuing to talk about him in this light, in the light that he's not getting the same treatment as Kyrie Irving um, did when he was, saying what he felt, steadily getting fined and things of that nature. And it's just not fair. I think that with Joshua Giddey, he does need to say something. He may not say anything based on advice from, his team and whatnot, but he definitely needs to say something. Not sure if it would hold any weight, but yeah, it's sad that Malikaandrews is not talking about Joshua Giddey. I think that people need to continue to tag her, tag him, and say, talk about Josh, address that situation. Make sure people understand that this is molestation. You can even use that word, even if it's not in the script. I mean, just go ahead and use it because that's what it is. And it's sick. It's really sick. And there are fathers out there with daughters, and they would just be so disgusted. They don't care about who it is. They really don't. Some. I'm not gonna say some people do though. Like I said, some of them groom their daughters to do this type of thing. But um, it's unfortunate that it's being kind of shoved under the rug, or it's just not getting enough limelight. That's how I know it's gonna be like a slap on the wrist for him. So I think that there may be some rebellion when it comes to people talking about Josh Giddey. People are no, maybe somebody will start a hashtag molester. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
And then maybe that will get him to start talking. And the girl may also come out and say something, but that could be a nice hashtag for him right now. Molester.
I think though it's interesting because like as we said earlier, the young girl, she not only was she the one who put it out there, and not only was it on her social media account, but she
Mhm.
posted it and she flaunted it. So
Yeah.
it's very interesting what the narrative is going to be if it changes, because I'm not sure if her parents will be too happy. I'm not sure if, her parents will be too happy with what is, about what has hit the media. Your
Right.
daughter allegedly had a sexual relationship with the older guy, but
Mhm.
to many of us, it sounded like consent. She shared on her story
They did.
of her and Giddey and her cheesing, and the pictures out there, and it said, "I just blanked Josh Giddey and smile face."
She was very happy. I mean,
So it's gonna
it's like
because
she
we know
secured the bag.
we know how girls did change the narrative in the past when they were caught with doing things as such. So it's gonna be interesting if her voice will change, and if she will now try to allegedly say that she was forced or it wasn't consensual.
I
So
think that's when we will hear him say something.
that's gonna be something that I'm gonna be very interesting to see. But I
Mhm.
think I'm also gonna be interested to notice the dynamics of the player being white. And I say this because when we think about the two Ohio State players, when the young girl lied and said that she was raped by those two
Mhm.
players, they lost their ability to play football. They didn't graduate from Ohio State. And come to find out, she lied, and
Right.
none of it was true. And they had her consent, which there was video evidence where she gave them consent
Right.
to have sex with her. And so we know how the criminal justice system is towards Black people and Black men, but they're not the same way to white men.
No.
So I'm gonna I when I'm it's interesting to me to know how it is going to play out when you know the court starts to get involved with this white older young man and this young white girl.
Right. Right. It's going to be interesting, and they're going to have to bring up race. So can't talk about this situation and not bring up race because it definitely plays a role. So that is it for today's episode, guys, because I mean, there was just so much to uncover and really talk about when it comes to what we're going to do with Ryan Day. Let's be realistic. Is he going to go anywhere right now? No. So we kind of have to deal with that. Joshua Giddey, I mean, he really needs to be held accountable, punished, and all of the above. Okay. He should be feeling the wrath of the NBA right now, but he's not. And that's what you call white privilege. And then we have Malikaandrews. I mean, the fact that she won't even really talk about this guy lets us know how biased she is. And she may be somewhat prejudiced and not even realize it when it comes to the way that, she does her anchoring and the way that she does her analysis when it comes to certain athletes. So just make sure you tune in on next episode on Friday. Make sure you follow, subscribe, and like our page. That way you get the notification for when the new episode starts. Other than that, thank you guys for tuning in, and you guys have a good evening. Bye.